You are sitting across from someone. They are talking. You are nodding. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know. They are not saying what they actually mean. Their words say one thing. Their eyes say something else entirely. And the exhausting part? You cannot unknow it. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from this, from being deeply understood by almost no one, while somehow being deeply needed by everyone. You walk into a room. Within minutes, you can already feel it. Who is pretending to be confident? Who is hiding irritation behind politeness? Who is desperate for validation, but acting completely detached? Nobody says these things out loud, but your mind catches them anyway. At first, people are drawn to you because of this. They open up fast. They tell you things they normally hide. They say they feel safe around you, seen, calm. But then, something changes. The same people who once felt comforted by your presence slowly start becoming colder, more defensive, more distant. Sometimes they subtly mock your sensitivity. Sometimes they accuse you of thinking too deeply. Sometimes they pull away without ever telling you why. And for a long time, you probably blamed yourself. Maybe I am too intense. Maybe I make people uncomfortable. But psychology suggests something far more uncomfortable than that. The issue was never your kindness. It was your awareness. Because some people do not resent you for what you do. They resent you for what your presence quietly forces them to feel about themselves. And that changes everything. Most people misunderstand empathy completely. They imagine an empath as someone soft, emotional, endlessly patient. But that is not what makes someone deeply empathetic. The real defining trait is perception. Your brain is constantly processing micro-expressions, tone shifts, pauses, hidden tension. Psychologists call this heightened emotional attunement. Your nervous system picks up information most people filter out completely. You hear the sentence, but you also hear the emotion underneath the sentence. Someone says, "I'm happy for you," but their jaw tightens slightly. Someone says, "It's no big deal," but their breathing changes. Someone laughs, but the laughter lands half a second too late. Not because you are paranoid, because your perception is unusually sensitive to emotional incongruence. And this creates a very strange social effect. Most people are not fully honest with themselves, not maliciously. Human beings survive through self-protection. We convince ourselves we are over the breakup when we are still grieving. We tell ourselves we are confident while secretly terrified. But then someone enters the room who notices the gap between the performance and the reality. That person changes the emotional environment without even trying to. For emotionally mature people, that feeling is healing. They feel safe enough to stop pretending. But for emotionally avoidant people, it feels threatening, because your presence interrupts the illusion they have been using to protect themselves. Suddenly, your calmness feels intimidating. Your honesty feels heavy. Your depth feels exhausting. Not because those things are bad, because your presence activated insecurities they were trying not to feel. This is one of the hardest realities empaths eventually learn. People are attracted to your energy for the exact same reason they later resent it. At first, your emotional intelligence feels comforting. You listen without interrupting. You make people feel psychologically safe. To a wounded person, that attention feels almost addictive. Their anxiety quiets. Their loneliness temporarily disappears. But this is where things quietly become dangerous. Because there is a massive difference between connection and emotional dependency. Connection is mutual. Dependency is extraction. And empaths confuse the two, because being needed feels meaningful. Someone saying, "You're the only person who understands me," can feel special. But over time, the relationship becomes one-directional. You are giving emotional labor, they are consuming emotional relief. And eventually, they begin comparing themselves to you. Your self-awareness reminds them of their avoidance. Your boundaries remind them of their chaos. Your growth reminds them of how stuck they feel. And if someone is unwilling to confront those feelings, the human ego does something fascinating. It reframes the person triggering the discomfort. Psychologists call this defensive projection. She thinks she's better than everyone. He's too sensitive. She overanalyzes everything. Your strengths are being reinterpreted as flaws, because acknowledging them as strengths would require self-reflection. And self-reflection is emotionally expensive, especially for people who have spent years avoiding themselves. This is why empaths experience one of the most confusing social patterns imaginable. People seek them intensely, then slowly punish them for the exact awareness they were originally attracted to. And empaths usually respond in the worst possible way. They shrink themselves. You notice discomfort, so you become quieter. You notice tension, so you soften your boundary. You notice withdrawal, so you start over-explaining. Little by little, you manage other people's comfort at the expense of your own authenticity. Because your nervous system has learned that harmony equals safety. But eventually, something inside you gets exhausted. Not dramatic exhaustion, a quieter realization. You begin noticing how many relationships only function when you abandon yourself inside them. And this is where people reveal their true relationship with you. Healthy people respect boundaries, even when they do not benefit from them. Unhealthy people interpret boundaries as rejection. Not because your boundary is cruel, because it removes access they felt entitled to. When you stop replying instantly, when you stop emotionally rescuing everyone, some people will genuinely adapt. Others will become irritated, almost immediately. And their irritation exposes something important. They were connected less to you as a person and more to the emotional function you served in their life. You were the therapist, the stabilizer, the validator, but never fully a human being with needs of your own. Someone being uncomfortable with your boundary does not automatically mean your boundary is wrong. Sit with that. Emotionally mature people tolerate temporary discomfort without turning you into the villain for creating it. Emotionally immature people cannot. And that difference determines the quality of almost every relationship in your life. At some point, deeply empathetic people reach a crossroads. You either keep shaping yourself around everyone else's expectations, or you accept something painful but freeing. Not everybody deserves unlimited access to your emotional world. That realization is not cruelty. It is discernment. Because empathy without discernment becomes self-destruction. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to stop offering emotional intimacy to people who only know how to consume it. The quiet strength of tolerating misunderstanding without abandoning yourself to avoid it. The quiet strength of letting people project their discomfort without rushing to prove your innocence. The quiet strength of recognizing that some people will only appreciate your depth from a distance, because experiencing it closely forces them to confront things they are not ready to face. You stop taking every cold reaction personally. You stop chasing clarity from people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking your awareness to protect others from self-reflection. You become more selective with your energy, more precise with your empathy, more honest about who actually deserves emotional access to you. Your sensitivity was never the weakness. Your lack of boundaries was. Your awareness was never the problem. Your willingness to ignore what it was showing you was. And the moment you stop apologizing for seeing clearly, your entire life changes. Not because the world became easier, not because people finally understood you, but because you stopped making yourself smaller to fit inside spaces that were never built for someone like you. That is not distance. That is finally coming home to yourself.